Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining this live streaming event here at Pakhuis Zwijger in Amsterdam. And today's conversation will be centered around the topic of sustainability in fashion, and not just focusing on the environmental aspects, but also focusing on identity, inclusion, well-being and emotions. And today's conversation will be also the build-up to the 4th edition of the Fashion Makes Sense Award. And before I dive into that, I will first introduce myself. I'm Trapman, I'm the host of this conversation, and I am the founder of MUMSTER, the conscious fashion movement. And with MUMSTER we try to inspire people to take action in the fashion industry in a very positive and creative way. And that's why we are here today as well. Today is the build-up to the 4th edition of the Fashion Makes Sense Award, and this award aims to support sustainable fashion designers, but also to raise awareness around sustainable fashion with a larger audience. That's why we're here today, to do that together actually, and therefore we invited several critical thinkers, pioneers, to discuss what is needed to bring sustainable fashion more forward, bring sustainable fashion to a larger audience. And I'm already talking too much by myself, so I would like to introduce all the panelists and lovely people that are here on the table and on the screen with us. So first I would like to start with you, Branko, as you are the one of the co-founders of FASHIONCLASH, of course, and the managing director. So maybe you can start with telling who you are and what you do.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Branko Popovic. I'm one of the directors and co-founders of FASHIONCLASH Foundation. We are based in Maastricht, in the south of the Netherlands. And I have a background in fashion design. I've studied fashion design at the Academy in Maastricht, and there is where I met my current colleagues and my best friends. And we, when we graduated, we didn't want to leave the city. We said, well, let's try if we can do something in the place where no one is expecting a fashion, avant-garde fashion to be born. And so we did that, and not knowing that 12 years later we'll be still doing that. And here we are sitting on the table in a different world talking about sustainable fashion and other matters that also brings a lot of hope as well. Mm-hmm. So I'm happy to be a part of this, and especially with everyone that is involved.
I'm also looking very much forward to the discussion, to the conversation. Maybe Daniëlle, you can share with us who you are and what you do.
Yes, thank you. It's so nice to be here together with you and to join this conversation. My name is Daniëlle Bruggeman. I am Professor of Fashion at ArtEZ, University of the Arts in Arnhem, which is an art academy. I run the research program there, so I am a researcher. I have a background in cultural studies, which means that I study fashion from a social and a cultural perspective. So what does it mean in our contemporary culture? How does it relate to identity? And of course today we focus on the urgent challenges in relation to the fashion system. So how can we develop alternative approaches? How can we develop alternative social systems? How can we bring back the human dimension in the fashion system? How can we re-engage with materials, with the matter of fashion? So these are some of the main research themes that we explore.
Wow, thank you so much. Really, really impressed by all of you already. And maybe Roosmarie, you can also share who you are and what you do.
Yeah, my name is Roosmarie Ruigrok. Since the 80s I live in Amsterdam. I started also in the fashion industry, following the Fashion Academy in the 80s to become a designer or someone in the supply chain. I started as a buyer in the textile industry, and during my first trip in the Far East I was wondering myself why we are considering the human interest, and especially on working conditions, so differently in Europe or in the West. Mm-hmm. Then we are here. Most of the buyers who I spoke in those moments, they felt themselves very proud when they bought something for a very cheap price. We say in the Dutch language, you are a spekkoper. And I was considering, but why? Later on in my career I found out there's a relation with the worker conditions and also qualities, and also how we look at fashion. but that later more maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that made me to do also my own business 10 years long, to do it how I was looking at the fashion industry. So, and I proceed in that. So when I sold my company, they told me that I did my job in a very sustainable way, and I had no clue in that moment. So I started to work in different kind of organizations, and in 2007 I founded with a group of enthusiasm people Clean&Unique, and the platform still exists there with designers, supply chain, people we know to come further together.
Wow, sounds really impressive, and I would love to hear a lot more, so don't worry about that. But first, I would like to ask you to share who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thank you. Also, thanks for having me. My name is Noeke Forster. I'm from Amsterdam. I'm from the southeast area, and I have been working as a freelancer for different cultural events and programs, festivals, and with Marian Duff, my colleague and also the director of OSCAM, we have been organizing Fashion Fest, which was a fashion program for a long time period. And it was a fashion battle against fashion designers, makeup artists, hairstylists, and we've been doing it for a long time. And 3 years ago, when the Belmer was existed for 50 years, she asked me to help and build on a new project, and the project was OSCAM. It's the Open Space Contemporary Art Museum, and yeah, with that we are hosting different exhibitions, shows and programs to stimulate the interest in arts, especially in the southeast area.
Yeah.
And we try to connect with other areas of Amsterdam and outside of Amsterdam as well.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for being here, because Marian couldn't be here today, so I'm happy that you are here to represent OSCAM.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So, now we know everyone on the table. We still have someone on the screen. So maybe, Tom, you can share who you are and what you do, because maybe a very nice thing to know. Tom opened Berlin Fashion Week just last week, and now he is here on the screen with us. So maybe you can share who you are and what you do, Tom.
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Tom van der Borght, and I'm a fashion designer / artist based in Ghent, Belgium. I graduated in fashion design in 2012 at the Royal Academy of St. Nicholas in Belgium. And then I developed my own brand step by step, and I was supported by FASHIONCLASH Festival since that very start. I have a very special connection to the festival because I'm originally from the Flemish side of the same region where FASHIONCLASH is happening. And another connection that I have with the city of Maastricht is that I continued studying there, and I did a post experience master in performance arts, where I do an ongoing artistic research that really talks on one side about topics like diversity, not being not normative or normality, and on the other side really this challenging borders between fashion, performance and arts. And recently, yes, like you said, 1 week ago I opened Berlin, Mercedes-Benz Berlin Fashion Week, and in October, last October, I won the Grand Prix, the Festival de Mode in Hyères in France.
Well, congratulations to that, and we will ask you all about it later on. Thank you so much for sharing. And I would like to open the conversation with asking you, Branko. We just mentioned the Fashion Makes Sense, of course. This is also the build-up. Maybe you can share in short, what is the Fashion Makes Sense Award exactly?
Yeah, so basically we started the Fashion Makes Sense Award in 2017 with our festival edition. That year was also called the Fashion Makes Sense edition. It was the year when we looked for finding more radical ways in how to articulate what we are doing, but also to spark a broader conversation with our audience. I mean, that is something that we have always done. Our basic starting point is always how can we contribute to a better world. And our very first project was, for example, a developing project in Brazil, what
Wow.
a lot of people don't know. So we really started from this social point of view. How can we make this an inclusive conversation where all disciplines or cultures or all kinds of audience are welcome to be part of the conversation? And in 2017, perhaps that's also the year where I felt like sustainability was kind of reaching more momentum within the conversations. But we didn't want to call it a sustainable award, or we wanted to make it that it's actually about more than just sustainable materials. That also showcases that this emerging generation are all conceiving a message about what they stand for, about inclusion, about their personal expression, about what it means for a human being on a personal level. And the word sense has a double meaning, and also playing with that. So does it make sense? Also posing the question at the same time. So, and we launched the contest on one side to literally give a platform for emerging designers, but at the same time use it as a conversation piece for the audience to talk about what does it mean, sustainable fashion, and what is it. And also because we believe to achieve a sustainable world, we have to really look at it holistically, and also how do we take care of the planet, of the people, of the neighbors, and all of these things are part of that. So, and this is now the 4th edition, and every edition there is a jury prize and a public prize. And and around that we always organize a conversation as well. And this is exactly what is happening at this moment.
Well, we are all very happy to be part of it, and I think you already made it very clear that that is also what we try to achieve today, to really open up the conversation and really raise awareness around the fact that sustainable fashion is not just is not about just focusing on the environmental aspects. What I already said, it's so much more, and this is also what the Fashion Makes Sense Award is all about. So yeah, that was actually my question. Why do you think it is so important to raise this awareness? Why do you think that is important?
I mean, if we want to make the world a better place, then we have to invite everyone to the conversation. And often let's say the fashion world or the fashion scene, as some people see it, as something different. Yeah. I think it's just one scene, and it takes itself sometimes too seriously, that it's important to, that you can have a conversation about it. Because a lot of people, especially because our projects are always open to everyone, we have conversations about, like, people, it starts like, who wears that kind of work, or but fashion, that's not something for me. And all these voices are also needed to be heard, and also to have conversation. And then often when you do invest time to talk with people, they realize, that you actually have a point. I did make a decision this morning to dress myself. And that's how my relationship started. So you cannot say that you are not co-responsible, because you have purchased garments. So you are contributing to the system already. And and also it's also looking at ways how can we articulate all these things so that people understand what we are talking about. I can imagine that a lot of people that are, even perhaps listening now, that they are like, but what are they talking about? It's like,
I hope
it's just clothes, and they take it to, it's like too complicated. But
it's clear that you really would like to, with Fashion Clash, with the Fashion Makes Sense Award, that you really want to raise awareness in all different kind of ways to make sure everyone feels included in this fashion revolution. Exactly. That we can actually make sure that everyone can contribute in their own way as an individual, whether you're a designer or a maker or just a consumer walking into the street. That is about raising awareness.
Exactly, it's about, as do we, we take care of our bodies, what we eat more and more, but it's same with how we dress ourselves, but it's also how we treat stuff around us and how we treat people. And so, and what was happening is that how we value clothing is so devaluated, it has absolutely no meaning for people. And And the beautiful thing for us is we work only with new generation of designers, that somehow they always bring new contexts and new stories, and that gives hope.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is this, I mean, how many people are there on the world all buying and consuming?
Yeah.
So, and it's also finding it's easy to judge people in their behavior as being consumer, but it's like, what do you do to why are they behaving in such way? You know?
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think when we talk about raising awareness, why it is important, it is maybe also nice to explain why it is important for the fashion industry to evolve to a more sustainable and better one. So maybe Roosmarie, you can share with us. Well, you work for a long time in the fashion industry. You have a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, also from different angles. Maybe you can share very briefly, I hope that's possible, the current state of fashion, and what do you think now is crucial to move it forward more rapidly?
I see that since 2000 we were in a transition first to understand each other, and what is possible and what not, because till the 60s I think we is the fashion industry, we had some industries here in Europe, also here in the Netherlands. Slowly it went away, so also a lot of people do not know how clothes are made anymore. And now this transition made that we start to understand, hey, was it a good idea to transmit all our knowledge to other countries and very far away, especially during COVID. This time this appears in many minds at the moment. So I see the curiosity also for bigger brands, especially for students and the young designers and who are willing to design their own collections. There's an enormous curiosity, and that you need as a designer as well, but also to sustainability. But now also the industry starts to reopen themselves. Only they are a little bit afraid, I think, to show what they are doing. Because there depends on so many things, because when they do something good and suddenly there's one thing what's not so good, then a journalist pinpoint on that. So they are very careful what they spread into the world. But there's a lot of interest.
But it's very positive to hear from you, from someone who's working so long in the industry, that you see a change. You see now, and I think, when you work in the industry, you also feel it. We feel a change that is moving into the right direction. But seeing the current state of fashion, the world, the climate, a lot of people working still under very bad conditions. We're not there yet. What do you think is now crucial to move the industry forward more rapidly? How can we accelerate? Because you said already, I see change, but how can we speed up the change?
Yeah, what Branko already said, that is to the holistic approach, and not to see a brand, a supplier as a supplier, and the waste stream as a waste stream. No, we are all connected. And now I see that some projects are starting up in this way, the supply chain direction. And when people feel comfortable in that, and they say, hey, I can make my markets as well, even if I work with so many stakeholders on a special project, I hope that makes the industry moves forward.
Okay, so you can already see a lot of things happening. You say, like, I see a lot is already going on carefully, because also people are a little bit afraid to maybe take a step in the wrong direction. But I think today it's also important to say, for the industry, but also for the consumer, every first step is very important. And we would like to inspire people to take a step, right? And not be afraid of making a mistake. And then my next question actually is to you, Daniëlle. We already talked a lot about sustainability awareness. And as a cultural theorist, you are specialized in fashion and identity. And we just started the conversation like, hey, when we want to bring the fashion industry more forward, we also have to do it with a holistic approach. I would love to hear your vision on this as a cultural theorist, of course, specialized in fashion and identity.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very grateful that we are talking about this topic because fashion indeed, it's about cultural values, it is about social interaction, it is about identity, it's about how we relate to each other. It's about communication, what do you communicate? So it's, and often in the debates on sustainability in fashion, the focus is very much on developing new materials, recycling, new production methods, which is also very important. And I participate in projects like these as well. But at the same time, we must also take into account that social and cultural dimension, and even the emotional dimension, the aesthetic dimension of fashion. And I think that's very important. For instance, we did a project on emotionally durable design, which is about the idea that if you have an emotional connection to a piece of clothing, you will take care of it better. You will not simply throw it away after using, but you will value it more. Because of course now lots of clothing is worthless. We just throw it away. It's cheap and we wear it a couple of times and it's low quality. So it's also a matter of revaluing fashion. And the challenge is, how do we do that?
Yeah, that's a very good and complex question, I believe, because it's not that easy to measure as it is to measure all these sustainable developments. When you look to materials, it's something you can measure really well, but how do you measure, how you can value, how do you learn that? And I think I want to ask that question to Tom. I think he has a lot to say about this. Tom, as a designer, you are really translating, or you're putting a lot of yourself, of course, in your design. And how is that for you? How do you try to value your clothes, and how is your design helping other people to do that as well?
Well, I think I have to start talking a little bit about the way how I come up with my work. So that still happens in my very small studio in my small house in Ghent. So I have always had a love for like a lot of handcrafted techniques and all the heritage that we have in that direction. And on the other side, I'm also very obsessed by innovation and moving forward. So I've always had like this both perspectives, and I never was really good in choosing, I think. So to follow a bit the explanation from before, I think in my approach, I really like to accumulate different approaches towards this sustainability thing. And I think the thing that I like to focus in my work is really to develop a new kind of precious pieces. I think I have always been interested in this idea of luxury, and I think luxury, it's mainly an emotion, or it's mainly a sensation that you get from something. It's a special connection that you build with a product or with a garment. And I think what always interests me is that I like to find new ways or new definitions of luxury. So I don't really search for that in like classic materials like gold or leather or this kind of things. But I like to try to find new definitions of luxury, and that can be partly dead stock material or recycled materials that through like several processes of intense handwork, you develop something like precious and really unique. But on the other side, it can also be very innovative materials like vegetable-based leathers or a fake fur that's developed from vegetable fibers. And I think for me as a designer, I like this accumulation of different approaches, and there I think lays the potential of my pieces to be precious pieces that you keep in your closet for a long time. Maybe also in my style, it's quite extrovert, it's quite wild maybe, but also there I like to always make a garment that invites the consumer to a conversation. And I think this is also a part of this sustainable approach.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, and that was actually my next question, because it sounds like you really are not just putting the value into the materials, but also you are giving the garment value because of your craftsmanship and your whole idea, and you putting the story, because you are also using like materials that are not so valuable, like not as gold. So how do you think that people can also learn to value their clothes? How can they do that? Do you have something like a tip that helped you to do that? Because a lot of people now, they just walk into the store, they buy a shirt they like now, and unfortunately after wearing it a couple of times, they don't wear it anymore, and it ends up in on the waste pile. So how do you think we could reconnect with our clothes again?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I can maybe, I don't know if I'm the right person to advise other people how to do it. I can explain a little bit how I try to do that in my collections towards my customer. I think for me, pieces that I develop, I always try to make it as an experience that goes from special attention to linings with small messages that are actually only for the person who wears it.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Like small motivational texts
discovery
that are hidden inside, like a packaging made out of recycled materials that gives the idea of something precious, something special. So I think for me it's really very much about an experience, and I think for myself that comes from I always had a love to stroll through secondhand markets and this kind of places and really find like treasures in a pile of trash maybe. So I think that's a little bit the state of mind. I think people really should, I think it's really a matter of how you look to things. Of course, when you walk through a high street and you see things that are in a very low price, they are also there to, it's maybe like a quick crush, but you will have a new quick rush next week. And I think, maybe it should go more into terms of a long-lasting love. And I think that's, of course, partly the responsibility of the consumer, but I think also as a designer, you can try to offer this experience to your customers.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing. I think that's already very clear, and I'm happy that you mentioned it. Of course, when we want to do this together, you can take responsibility as a consumer. So really think about, okay, how can I value my clothes more and wear it more, keep it longer in my closet, but also what you said, as an industry, as makers, you also can think more about, okay, how can I produce in a more sustainable way, or give the consumer help the consumer to value your clothes as well. I like all the examples you give to the little discoveries in the clothing. I'm very curious about that.
Can I ask something to Tom?
Of course, go ahead.
Because I'm very curious, Tom, if you have any direct connection with your people who are wearing your collection. So you can have feedback, or do you have...
Well, I think of course, winning the festival in Hier in almost fully digital mode, and now opening Berlin Fashion Week in a fully digital setting. I think I got quite specialized maybe in being some kind of a digital designer. I think. So I think in that sense, my Instagram account in first place is like a very straightforward way to communicate to my customers. So that's also, I think, the most direct channel where I go into conversation with my customers about the things that I make.
Because you are immediately reacting also on what they say to you, because I can imagine that someone said, this sweatshirt or this
I found this
was really beautiful.
Quote.
Yeah, and or the other was, oh no, leave it next time out of your collection because it was horrible. But you listen also, because I interact on the movement, what is going on to make on demand. Also about sustainability, people speak, we have to produce less, so the next step will be to produce on demand. So for this I ask you if you have this direct interaction.
I have that kind of conversations through my Instagram account mostly. As I am still a really small studio, I still do all this communication by myself. So yeah, I do go into this kind of conversations. If I really listen to it, oh yeah, no, that's harder to say. I think you're always, from the moment that people give reactions, it automatically influences you. But I think in the essence, when I design, I mostly follow my own stream a little bit, and I hope then that people react to that in different ways.
Yeah. Nice. Well, that's very nice, and I think that's also how fashion should be. I believe that it should be a form of art coming from your soul as a designer, and that we should bring a little bit the art back of fashion. And I would like to ask you, Nuki, do I pronounce it right? Nuke, I'm sorry, that's why I'm asking again. Thank you. With OSCAM, you are connecting, and you are also giving a platform to young talent, and you're also focusing on art, and also you include fashion. So, yeah, we already talked about you want to include like young talents, young people with passions. Why is it so important for you to include everyone? Because we already talked about if you want to bring the sustainable fashion industry forward, we have to include. Why is that so important? Why do you think it's important to include everyone?
Yeah, well, I think if we were talking about fashion, art, and problems which go along, we have to include everyone because everyone is part of it. And looking at the fashion industry, which is very, how do you say it? It's very tight. When if you're not involved in the fashion industry, you might not know a lot of information about it. And there's a discussion going on about sustainability and making the right choices when it comes down to fashion. I think because everyone is part of that fashion industry, whether you're a consumer or you're a buyer or you're a seller or designer, everyone is part of that fashion industry. So that's why inclusion is very important if you want to really make a change.
And how do you, what is the biggest change here? Because obviously we having this conversation to also figure out how we can include, what do you think, what is the biggest change? What is the biggest step we can take to include everyone in this?
Yeah, I think we really need to start opening doors. When it comes to sustainability, it goes about what is really happening. And you also mentioned that sometimes when you open the door, not a lot of pretty things are happening, and some people might not want to show it.
Yeah.
But if you don't show it, we might not know what's going on. So we still don't know why we have to change or why we have to think about our behavior towards buying or selling or making. So I think it starts with opening up doors and also teaching the next generation what we have to accomplish in the next years within fashion or within art. And for example, in OSCAM we have one of our programs is Young OSCAM, and in that program we have the museum host, which are the people who are on the floor on a daily basis. They are interacting with the visitors, and they are guiding them through the whole exhibitions. But next to that, they also have their own projects going on, and we are guiding them to be also producers and curators and programmers. And in that way, we can teach them how to be inclusive within the art industry.
Wow, that sounds really cool. And I think it's also good that you mentioned that you include also in a literally way, that you really try to engage everyone as much as possible. So whether you are a consumer or a designer or a young artist, so especially as a consumer you can also actually contribute, but then they also need to know how they can contribute as a consumer.
Yeah, and it's very important because the consumers are also the people who buy stuff. So if you stop buying, the people who are designing might need to adjust their behavior.
Yeah, and that is actually good that you mention this, because I think for a long time the sustainable fashion revolution, a lot of people thought it was centered around buying expensive sustainable fashion brands. And I think it's now also important to point out that it's so much more, what we already discussed before. I'm very curious, because we want to engage the audience. Is there already a nice question we can ask Jessie? I can hear you if you talk louder. Yeah, you can just tell me what the question is.
Yeah, I can tell you. Yeah, we have some questions, and first of all, it's a shout out to Nuke, because you have quite some OSCAM fans watching.
Oh, really?
It's cool. So that's nice. And there is a question: should a brand or a designer help the consumer, the customer, to adjust the clothes they once bought? Who is willing to answer that?
That is a very interesting question. Who would like to answer this? Maybe Tom, as a maker, you can answer this question. Did you hear it, or shall I repeat the question for you?
No, I heard the question. Yeah, I think in my philosophy, I always say, like, it's not my job to decide how or who wears my clothes. In that sense, I also don't really like to define the gender and this kind of things too much, or I try to in my sizing range, I try to incorporate as much as gender neutral sizings as possible. Until now, I never had that question. If I would get that question, I would be totally very willing to give advice on which ways it could be the best. But on the same time, I think that's also maybe, if I speak for my own brand, then I think I hope to send out this image of freedom, and I hope that my customers feel free to do whatever what they like to do with my piece of clothes. So yeah, in that sense, no, I find that an interesting idea, and if anybody wants, they can always send me a message.
Well, be careful what you wish for there.
But I think,
and what do you think?
I think I mean, we are living in really exciting times. I would say much more exciting than when I was graduating. I mean, there was so much information exposed about. I mean, when I was studying the world, decolonialism, sustainability, I didn't even knew these words.
No.
Now we have so many new words and information that was not even available for someone that was studying fashion design. So it's so exciting. And I think for consumers if they are interested to engage more with how clothing is made and then the best way is to really, I mean, everywhere there are young designers working on small scale. So it's so easy to find this direct connection, and I think we have also lost that experience. I mean, back then people have stories about, oh yeah, my grandmother or my mother made clothes, so I knew how it was made, or it was made for you especially. So you kind of knew what it contained to be dressed and to be measured, and to experience your body size and what it means in relation to clothing. And I think there lies a potential for young designers to also really stay smaller as a brand, and so that perhaps you don't have maybe you know all your consumers.
Yeah.
And we see a lot of examples with our platform also, brands that have this kind of that you can give clothing back and they make another one out of that. You know, so there are so many ways in how you can create this relationship with your consumers, and you see that a lot happening in the new generation, also in the Netherlands. A lot of designers are developing their practices in such a way that it changes also, this interaction.
Yeah, because I think it's really nice that we come back to revaluing your clothes and to connect with clothes, but also connect with the maker, but also the maker with the consumer. And just like Roosmarie already mentioned, we are all interconnected. So I'm really curious about what you see for the future. How can we, as individuals, contribute to positive change, but also realize that we have to do it together and connect?
Yeah. Well, responding to what Branko just said, I completely agree with that. I think it's very interesting to consider how to involve the wearer and also in the process of making textiles and making clothes. And because in my experience in the projects that I see where that happens, also there's the linen project of my colleague Pascal at one of our MA programs at ArtEZ, and there our students, our design students, they grow flax, they produce linen, they make the yarns themselves.
Wow.
So they harvest it also with the farmers together. They really learn to understand how it grows, how it's made, and that offers them such a different kind of awareness of the time that it takes, the blood, sweat and tears that it takes to make clothing, to make the yarns, to make the textiles. And I think that increases their understanding and the value of clothing, because they see what we usually don't see behind the scenes. We don't see the blood, sweat and tears that go into it. We only see the spectacle, the beautiful spectacle of what fashion can be, and the glamour and the seduction and the desire, which is also there. So yeah.
And now you see, because you see that a lot of designers, makers, they are now in that process, what you just described.
Yeah.
And that is why they are becoming more and more aware of this. But how can we also share this knowledge a bit to the consumer who is not making the clothes themselves, but just buying it from the makers?
Yeah, I think there's an important responsibility for the companies and the designers to tell their stories, to be transparent about how it's made, where do these materials come from, also to be transparent about the design choices that they made in order to make it as sustainable as possible, and to communicate that to consumers, to the wearer. And for consumers, it's also reminding yourself that once you buy a piece of clothing, it's like voting. Who do you want to vote for? Mm-hmm. Do you want to vote for the big players in the industry that sustain the system, the problematic system as it is right now? Or do you want to vote for maybe smaller companies or designers who really try to do it differently and to contribute to that alternative movement of doing things differently in a more sustainable, maybe more small scale, more local way, but to really radically question that and from sincere intentions try to do it differently. So it's about making choices. Who do you want to buy from, and doing your research also. Do these companies tell the story about where it comes from? Are they transparent about it or not?
Yeah, and that is actually very good that you now mention it, because that's actually a question I want to ask you, Roosmarie. We got a question from the audience. Should brands share more information? Well, you said yes, because then we can actually help the consumer to find out if they can trust what they see. But if you know nothing about sustainability or anything, how can you do this research as a consumer? Where do you begin?
If you don't have the interest, if you are not curious, you shop and that's it. There are 400 certifications in fashion, so how a consumer can know the difference? Only in cotton there are so many differences, and everyone say we are sustainable, but is it true? Is it a project, or it's a certification? It's a durable program what they are offering? People don't know. I know that Europe try to have this European certification, but We live in a free market, so everyone is free to do business with who they want. So I think that we really have to restart and reconsider everything what we have nowadays. And I know that organic cotton, the GOTS, the fair trade is it's considered as the golden standards, but then also it becomes more expensive. And talking about inclusion, you want everyone to include. So spoken about sustainability, I see it as an umbrella with a lot of points, and it's a social, it's environmental, it's inclusion, and yes, for every brand there is one topic what is top of mind, and I hope that to start with one topic, that it falls into in another wave, and then in another wave. And for example, you see that some bigger brands, they start also repair cafes or alteration, mending parts in the companies. While you are there, you can ask to make a new seam in clothes or to put a new zipper inside for the reparation. So
there are multiple ways.
There are multiple ways.
And
so
I'm happy that you tell that, because I think also when we talk about inclusion, that it's not only about buying big sustainable brands who are like screaming that they are like sustainable, because can you trust them? And I think it's really nice to change the perspective, change our mindset, and really understand that sustainability in fashion is about revaluing clothes, about, okay, how do I buy my clothes? Does it fit me, my personal style? So it's so much more, and also how do I take care of my clothes? And I think then if we do it like that, also more people actually feel that they can contribute, because you can buy a clothing piece and then repair it if it's broken. Everyone can do it, and if you cannot do it, you can learn it, or you can bring it to someone who can do it, right? But so I think...
But also how you get encountered with information. But I think, for example, what's so important, like OSCAM, for example, it's especially because they are in a place where they are, where it's visible for people. When we also have done things like that, like have a show in a shopping mall. It's not the most beautiful place to do it. But why not? Why not do it as a place where people will never encounter? Because we have a lot of audience members that have never experienced anything that is somehow related to the art of fashion. It's just not something they consider part of their world. And we experience also controversy that people are like, what is this? And like they find it ugly or what. But it's still, I always like, they have seen it. It's also.
I also think we have to think of new ways how to include people, because yes, we've built a beautiful space with very styled and very, very clean, and which is not something familiar in the southeast area. So when we started, first, people were walking by and were like, what is this gallery doing here? And we were like, we're not a gallery, we're a museum, but you're welcome, please come in. And so we started off ways how to get people in. And we created educational and participative programs, and also people in the neighborhood with ideas, they can come inside to explore and showcase their craft. So I think we have to, when it goes to sustainable fashion, also we need to think of ways how they can be part of it without working in the fashion industry.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it can be rather intimidating. The representation has been kind of intimidating. I mean, I encounter people like, oh yeah, you're such a nice person, and like, why wouldn't I be? It's like because there is like this this image that has been created for over so many years, and so it's also you kind of have to try harder. It's easy to say like, oh yeah, but they don't understand it. No, you kind of what are you going to do to, and we as platforms have this responsibility to find encounters with audience, and it takes time. It's not easy, so you have to invest in that.
Yeah.
You have to work for that.
And I think especially when you really made the decision to work in the fashion industry, there's also responsibility to choose the right materials, to choose the right language, and also provide people with the right information without only damaging what is going on in the
But
world.
there are so many platforms, but a consumer, a person who is going to shop, most of the time it's a reason, and they want to shop it now.
They want to have
they
it.
have a party, they
Yeah.
have something nice to do, and I think then sustainability is not top of mind. So I hope that in the future, in the near future, there will be the responsibility on producers in the EU. And I hope that that makes really a big step, I want to say. So the people who are willing to buy something, or that they can buy what they want, because they know, like you buy good food, that it's okay behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And that's really the responsibility from the person. We want to make money out of it. The we is the industry. The designer also want to showcase the designs. They want to explore their feelings. But it's the responsibility from designers, from the industry, from spinners, from the weavers, from the knitters, to do it in a good way.
Yeah.
And there are so many examples nowadays that it's very hard to say no to also the new industry.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this is also partly due to the capitalistic system we are in now. And I would like to ask you this question: do you think it is now possible in this system for everyone to make this change, to really design at your own pace, to buy as a consumer when you need something and not when you think you need something? How long would it take for us to get there?
Well, that's a big question.
I know, I'm sorry.
In the current system, well, there are so many people that really have sincere intentions to make that change. Of course, we are not there yet. We are all in a phase of transitioning and exploring how to transition. We all want to contribute, but at the same time, it's also a system of power relations, of interests, of economic growth. It's such an established system. We cannot change it overnight. So, but I do really believe that we have taken some important steps, especially, I guess, the last decades. You probably can say more about that than I can. But I think we are moving towards the right direction, and keeping that dialogue, I think it's very important. Keeping this conversation going and not only talking about it, but also doing this together, coming to an integrated systemic approach. And you just referred to consumer behavior. I completely agree. That is current consumer behavior. It is the current consumer mindset. Not to be so aware of it. Maybe some groups of people, but certainly not the mainstream audience. And that can take lots of time. This is really about social change, cultural change, a paradigm shift. It can take maybe 10, 20 years before we really... So in the meantime, yes, then I think all designers, companies, producers should take the moral responsibility.
Yeah.
But at least I never need to explain anymore what CSR means. Because when I started 20 years ago to talk about it, the people looked at me and say, "What you saying?" And nowadays, interesting. I don't know the details, so tell me more, or I know something. So
exactly.
That is
a good sign.
It's 20 years, so it's a sign. And of course, there's also a lot of greenwashing. Now also consumers are a little bit confused about that. So, but that makes that also these apps like Good on You or
maybe you can explain what does greenwashing mean, and how can you maybe make sure that you as a consumer do not become a victim of greenwashing.
Yeah, this is very hard to say, the last sentence you mentioned. Greenwashing...
I only ask really big and difficult questions.
Greenwashing started in the time that hotels started to ask their guests not to use the towels every day or every minute, and to use them more than once. So, and then it's a question, does it make sense? And that didn't make sense, they say, in figures, but it made sense in awareness. We have awareness creation. We did it for a long time, awareness creation. That you need that part, awareness creation, for to make a movement without to say, hey, you are doing this, you are doing that. But that a consumer really becomes in the habit to say, okay, no, I refuse to do this because I choose for that. I look in the label. I'm more conscious about my own footsteps in this kind of things. But it's still that group. It was mapped for a long time. It's called the Cultural Creatives. Now I don't know if it's mapped anymore because it's very hard to. And you see, like also with the electric cars, that when there is a discount or there is something into them, then they want to do it. And you can talk about if it's fashion or not, but let's say it's textiles and clothes. So like a big retailer here in the Netherlands, Zeeman, they're very open and transparent what they are doing. They mention on their website what they are doing, what they are going to do, and where their goal is. And hopefully many retailers are going to follow up that, because everyone understands that you cannot be there from 0 to 100, and to show the steps and that you are willing to do. And therefore I think that it's really no time anymore to raise your hand and say, hey, retailer, you do that, but you are not doing that and that. No. And buy, as a consumer, you can buy that products, the conscious collections, the green collection, the collection they do with the organic cotton or something, but showcase with your wallet, because you have so much power as a consumer.
Yeah, I understand that you say like we have to connect with each other. As a consumer, it is maybe a nice thing to search for transparency when you are looking for brands and companies and designers because you need to buy something new. Are they transparent? Are they opening up about the steps they are taking, and then maybe you can trust them a little bit more. But I hear what you say, like maybe it's good that we start encouraging each other more, connect more instead of like, okay, you're doing it wrong or you're not doing it right.
But it's also that. Like, I think, like if you step a little bit further away from fashion design, consumerism is, it's like there is a consumptive behavior in the whole world. And it's not only, it's often the lens is put on the fashion industry, but let's say all industries are responsible for it. And when people are shopping, they're shopping also other things, not just clothing. I mean, you literally see the behavior. We thought like we perhaps come to senses because of COVID, but in the Black Friday, no one was really respecting the distance anymore. So nothing changed in the awareness of how we experience the world. So I think like there is like a corporate responsibility in how we change the whole society to approach everything we consume different. So it's, and that's not something we can solve, but it starts from what are we educating people from the first time. What do you teach? You teach them to read, to write, but do we also teach people where does everything around you comes from? Which is, I think, a lot of people we've totally lost sense of the connection to everything that is, that we exactly. I think one of the most beautiful examples in fashion is if you grow a garment, and it takes with the whole community to have one garment in the end. Isn't that the best thing that you can experience as a community together? It's gonna grow food together and then all enjoy that because you have created it together. So I think at this level, it should be more conversation on consumptive behavior. It's also how sometimes you experience like students kind of like this demanding, I want this kind of courses, I want this. So it's all part of that. Like kind of we feel like we have the right for things, but no one has, like we. So there's something has been. I mean, obviously it was beautiful that capitalism and the democratic world has made a lot of things accessible for people, but we've totally lost track.
Yeah, it's now, it's gone too far indeed, and I'm happy that you are mentioning, because I'm really curious, Tom, you also a person who likes to question the mainstream now, because I think you mean there needs to become a mind shift in the whole society.
Exactly.
We need to
It's
change
much
our
broader
whole
than
consuming behavior in all areas, and I'm wondering how do you try to spark these conversations with your work to really change this mind shift? Oh, I cannot hear him.
Sorry.
Yeah.
There I am.
Yeah, there you are. Hello.
I said that's a good question. Well, I think in my work, maybe I think it starts maybe with the place where I position myself. I've always struggled a bit with boxes. I'm still not convinced if I'm a fashion designer or a performance artist or a graphic designer or a weird mix of those things. So I think already there is an essence of individuality that doesn't really fit into preconceived notions. So I think maybe in my approach, in my work, I think it comes from a kind of an artistic way of looking at things. And before I was in fashion, I was working for 8 years in social work, and I also have a degree in social work. And working with mainly with young people and with children from very different backgrounds, I think I really got interested by this notion of normality, or being normal or being not normal, or being part of it or being excluded in a way. And I think also on a personal level, I grew up in a really small village in Belgium. I was born end of the 70s, so when I was in my teenager years and I came out as gay, it's not that I experienced a lot of bullying or something, but still I immediately got also that sticker like of being special or different. And then a bit later on in my life, I discovered I suffer from a genetic muscle disease. So that immediately confronted me with this label of able or disabled. So I think that's where my interest for this topic of inclusivity or diversity comes from. And I think the way how I try to translate it in my work is, maybe I really start from a very personal story, and in a way I just tell my own story, and in the end I am the least important person in the planet, or it's in the end it's totally not about me, but I just think maybe because I talk about these topics from a very personal point of view, that it's something authentic and true, and that it's maybe that what I do maybe also visually really is an alternative for the normal, or is a question to this thing, or is it normal, is it not normal, why? And I'm really interested about that kind of.
Because I think that is so important that you mentioned it, like questioning the norm. I think that we landed in a situation in a society where everyone is just following the norm with their money, with their opinion. You know, people are marketing, of course, from the big brands, from big companies also play a huge role in that people are like, there are a lot of people who feel or have the feeling they cannot be themselves, or they have to buy this or look like this to be part of something. And it is extremely important, I believe, that designers like Tom or the designers that are joining the competition of the Fashion Makes Sense Award, that they are the ones that show a whole different perspective, right? That everyone can feel like, hey, but there are so many different ways to look at fashion or the world. I feel I can be part of this as well. And maybe it's nice, I think we're almost running out of time, to really tell the people how they can still vote for designers who are trying to make a difference in the fashion industry.
Yeah, we have 9 finalists, but I have to say that, I mean, there's the whole new generation. It's really shout out from all of them that are really trying to make a difference.
Yeah.
And people, it would be nice if people look beyond the aesthetic of the finalists, but try to find out about what are they telling with their stories, and then vote to see whether you can vote beyond your aesthetical taste. And that is what a lot of them are also trying to redefine the relationship with their audience. And I mean, impact starts with one person already. Is that even though you have only 3 people that are interested in your work, that's amazing. You have a responsibility for 3 people. You can change the world. And one of the finalists, for example, she's inspired by the power of 3, and all of them also to look at. I mean, in all the parts of the world, people look at things differently. So we have also designers from different countries. So sustainability and the way we treat fashion has also different meaning in different places. So we have to take that into account. That we're
definitely
not judge. Look down on people that are making fashion in other countries, which has often happen as well. So I would say, like, take your time. If you take your time to vote for them, take also time to look what's more beyond this aesthetical representation that we see.
and that could already be like the first, I would say, simple step to that consciousness, that you're not judging the clothing or the art from the designers on how it looks, but what is the thought behind this whole clothing piece. I think that could be like the first step of this whole raising awareness with yourself.
And they are all interested in conversation. I mean, and there are a lot of opportunities these days to communicate with each other. So let's use the technology for that as well.
Definitely.
I sent them after your awards to us, to Clean&Unique, because we can have the conversation going on. Because at Clean&Unique we have 20 designers, brands who are constantly in conversation with each other and willing to learn so much, and they are doing such beautiful things. I'm so proud about them, what they are doing. So I can imagine you have, and I can see also a bridge between what Tom is saying, what you say in the start of about the playground, to be curious. We have to be children.
Yeah, we have to be children again. That's for sure. And before I wrap it up, I would like to ask if there is still a nice question from the audience.
There is one. Yeah, it's for Roosmarie. Because Roosmarie, you're working on the recycling project, also known as the Reflow project. How do you see solutions with all the waste? Should we still make new clothes?
Oh, wow, that's a good question.
Yeah, very good question.
So maybe you can start in short telling what the Reflow project is for the people that don't know that project.
Okay, the Reflow project is an Horizontal 2020 project. It's a European project where 6 cities in Europe, they are doing research how materials can reflow in cities. Amsterdam has to focus on textiles, so we are looking really in deep with consumers, industries, with governmental organization, how we can do that, and it's a very holistic approach as well. But the starting point is not from design the clothes, but from when consumers or companies discard the textiles and what we can do then with them. And of course, we follow the steps of the air ladder, rethink, reuse, repurpose, etc. And at the end, it's the recycling industry. Because nowadays we see also that everything is recycling. Circulaire is recycling. No, it's circularity in textiles is not recycling. It's only the end of the stair. So we are taking with programs also from Pakhuis, Zwijger, the audience with us, with the heroes we already have, because it's not new. There are a lot of industries and designers and institutions already working for decades in this industry. And we try to bring them together.
Mm-hmm.
And next week, the 15th of follow Reflow project, please. Because
The question was, what do you do with the textile waste? And yeah, should we produce more new clothes?
that it's not easy. So we do not say this in the project. So we are researching
Mm-hmm.
consumers' behavior, how we can transform the consumer behavior, how we can transform the industry
Mm-hmm.
together, and how we can transform the industry and connect them all together. At this moment in the region of Amsterdam, we discard as a consumer 14 kilograms of textiles. 10 kilograms of textiles end up in waste streams,
Mm-hmm.
and that has to be zero. So
Yeah.
we really are focusing next month that consumers and citizens discard their textile, if they discard it, into the textile bins, because nowadays it's so important to start with where you put these textiles.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can assume that and motivate the industry to come also with better textiles, so mono yarns, better qualities.
Yeah.
So if and when consumers discard the textiles, we can reuse it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I have to wrap it up. And for everyone who is watching, you can now still vote, of course, and you can find all the information about the Fashion Makes Sense Award on the website of FASHIONCLASH. And of course, when you watch this, when the award is already over, you can find everything about FASHIONCLASH and all the great things they are doing on the website. And I would really love to thank everyone here at the table. I found it a very interesting discussion, and also you, Tom, I want to thank you as well. It was very lovely. And if you have any questions for anyone, you can always let us know, and make sure you follow FASHIONCLASH or MUMSTER to stay updated. I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.